stream. So we're going to, well, also first, welcome. We'll get into everything momentarily, but we're probably going to start around 2:05-ish. I think that's what we're starting at right now. But in the meantime, say hi, tell us where you're streaming in from, say a little thing about your show. No time like the present to start saying what your show's about. Yeah. Oh, like right here? Great. I mean, it's one of the biggest learning curves is getting used to the mic like right here. But, it'll be great. Good. I'm going to jump into it. I'm going to remember to eat the mic and speak clearly and slowly. But welcome, everyone. Welcome to Town Hall number 2, talking about accessibility. I'm Roddy. I am the audience services manager over here at Hollywood Fringe. I started my Fringe journey in 2023 as a scholarship recipient. And then in 2024, I joined on as staff and have just had a lovely experience supporting the artists. I am always happy to answer your questions and just facilitate your Fringe experience in any way that I can. For a visual description, and my pronouns are he, him, but visual description, I'm a Latin male with black curly hair, currently wearing glasses, a black turtleneck, some jeans, and yes, Jeanette, do you want to take the reign and introduce?
Yes, of course I do. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeanette. This may be your first time meeting me, the marketing and operations manager for Hollywood Fringe. I started with Hollywood Fringe in 2022 as a scholarship recipient, started working for Fringe in HFF25. And now I'm still working here. So I'm really excited to be here. This is my first town hall thing. So I'm really excited to share this experience with all of you. Just for a visual description, I am a Latin South Asian woman with short brown hair. Pronouns are she, they. I'm wearing a long sleeve blue top, green pants, and black shoes. And I'm wearing glasses as well. I forgot about that.
Incredible. So we're going to do a couple of announcements right before we dive into the town hall, and we're going to get to those momentarily. But first, we want to do a land acknowledgement, and I'll just read off of what we have written here. It's also located on the hollywoodfringe.org/land. So the Hollywood Fringe acknowledges that we are on the unceded lands of the Tongva, Quiche, Gabrieleños, and Gabrielinos people. Our statement serves as a practice as we commit to furthering our connection to the indigenous communities of past, present, and emerging. And later in the festival, you'll get a MP3 or a soundbite that we ask that shows put before their performance begins. And then we also want to say hi to the live stream and give a couple thanks because the Broadwater is hosting us today at the second stage. They're one of our Fringe venues. Check them out. And then we are going to dive into access needs. So, oh, interesting. This kind of goes for today's town hall, but also future town halls and workshops, that if you have an accessibility need that isn't being met, please don't hesitate to let a member of staff know during your Fringe experience. Also, for our town halls and workshops, if you let us know 72 hours in advance, we can assist with ASL accessibility and interpretation. Simply email support@hollywoodfringe.org. And then, we'll be scheduling an interpreter and making sure that we're able to assist in any way we can. Oh, we're really close. Okay. Upcoming workshops and town hall events. So part of Fringe's pillars of our ethos is we want to have town halls and events to facilitate and teach producers, oftentimes producing for the first time, how to do so. And so if you look up at hollywoodfringe.org/events, you'll be able to find the full lineup, our programming that we have. Again, this is Town Hall number 2. We'll be going all the way till Town Hall number 5. A ton of good stuff. And if you ever can't make those days, don't worry. All of our events, town halls, and workshops are live streamed and then recorded and found on hollywoodfringe.com. No, Hollywood Fringe YouTube. Yeah, just type in Hollywood Fringe YouTube. That's where you're going to find it. Jeanette, do you want to talk about some upcoming dates and workshops?
I would love to. So here are some upcoming events to look at as we start getting ready for HFF25. On Tuesday, March 25th from 7 to 9, we have our 5th workshop, Marketing and Ticketing, at the GGC Theater. That will also be digital as well. Again, just make sure you go to our YouTube channel, Hollywood Fringe, for all of our pre-recorded, past recorded, I should say, events, workshops, town halls, all that fun stuff in case you miss it. Our next event after that is Tuesday, April 13th from 2 to 4. Our third town hall, printed guide, ticketing, and press, in person and digital, of course, at the LA LGBT Center. Monday, April 14th, 7 to 9, we have our web session number 2, site navigation and projects pages. All of these events are very important. I will say specifically, as someone who also participated, this is a very important one. Trying to navigate our site, make sure you have full access, full reign of that for your project. And again, like Roddy mentioned earlier, make sure you go to hollywoodfringe.org/events for our full list of upcoming workshops, town halls, and web sessions. We continuously update that, so just make sure you're checking in with us. And yes, again, any previous events, don't worry, go to YouTube, Hollywood Fringe, subscribe to us so you don't miss anything.
Brilliant. And I'm going to highlight about 3 links right now for at this stage in the process of producing your Fringe show. So if you haven't already, definitely check out the participant packet. That's at hollywoodfringe.org/participants. It's about like a 65-page document, so it can be a little big. You don't need to read it all right now, but it's broken up into phases, and we're currently in phase 1. And really what's happening in phase 1 is like looking at prospective budgets, which, speaking about that, last year we had a bunch of amazing shows. I reached out to a handful of them, and we anonymized their budgets and have now put them on the website to kind of get an idea of the budgets and the costs that go into producing at Hollywood Fringe. So that's that 2024 budget samples. That is on our blog, so you check it out there. And then the final document that I'll shout out is the annual report. So we have a annual report that we released in the summer of this year, or technically last year. And that's about like a 12-page document that kind of details what the festival last year was like, some of our programming, but also some of our statistics. For example, you'll find out there that like the average listed ticket price was $15, whereas the average paid for ticket was $10.71. You'll also see there that like shows performed on average 5 times during the course of the festival. And just like more stats like that give you an idea of like what is the typical experience that last year had and how does that all happen. I think we're going to jump into some key dates. Jeanette, do you want to take the reins on?
Yeah, I would love to. So these are some important festival dates and deadlines to keep in mind. April 15th, registration deadline, because your guide listings will be locked in our guide. It's super exciting. It's really helpful. You have a show, an image of your show you can submit, little blurb, your dates, all that fun stuff. We want to make sure you don't miss that because you'll miss a lot of excited audience members if you do. So April 15th is the registration deadline. April 20th, guide proof and ads deadline. So just keep that in mind. May 1st, tickets go on sale. That is a big one. So remember that May 1st, tickets for our 15th anniversary festival will go on sale. Then, of course, from June 5th, to June 10th is our previews. June 11th is our opening night party. So make sure you put that in your calendar. We want to party with all of you guys. June 12th to the 29th, we have our Fringe Festival 2025. And then June 30th is our awards and closing night party. So again, all of these dates are super important, but they're also on hollywoodfringe.org/events. So don't worry about that, but just make sure you have them in your calendar to continue to plan with Fringe, get your venue show locked in, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and then we're all really excited to be swept up in the Fringe excitement, the shows that are going to be going on. But something that we're already reminding participants about, that is also when you registered your show, you agreed to, which is our code of conduct. I'm actually not going to stray too far from the language we've written here because I want to be correct on what I'm saying here. But again, here at Hollywood Fringe, we don't have a ton of rules. It really is an exploration and an experimentation area for your creativity. But we do take this code of conduct quite seriously, and it really sums up our ethos as a festival. And again, since you've registered your project, it is your responsibility to follow the code of conduct, as well as inform your cast and creative team. Typically, we recommend that, that first day of rehearsal, when you're diving into the material and everything, that you sit down, you go to hollywoodfringe.org/conduct to find the full code of conduct, and just go over it with your team. I think taking that time out will really help the overall experience, right? Because we don't want to have mishaps or accidents or whatever may come from just not knowing about the code of conduct. And, that extends to digital spaces like this. So those in the chat, go check out our code of conduct, be aware of it. But speaking more to that, so the Hollywood Fringe is committed to creating an inclusive environment in support of our participants. That's all of you here today and online. The festival is built on a freedom of expression and a lack of censorship, which means that we must maintain the utmost respect for one another to create a safe place for people to take risks in their work. The following are not allowed in our community. So that's like microaggressions, verbal and physical intimidation, hate speech, harassment, sexual harassment, assault. Let's go back on here. Whoops. Excessive consumption of alcohol and other legal substances, aggressive behavior. And as you're navigating the festival, something that we want to bring to light is just be mindful of intention versus impact, and then also public versus private interactions. Yes, if you do experience any of the above, or you are doing any of the above, a member of Fringe staff will come to you with a complaint, and please take it seriously. If our code of conduct is not followed, your time at Fringe can be ended before the festival finishes. And then if you witness or experience any of the above, please report it to any present Fringe staff members as soon as possible. I think the sooner we get reports, the more speedily available we're able to act on those. And always, you feel free to email conduct@hollywoodfringe.org. That email is monitored very regularly for these kinds of events. Yeah, so just like, thanks for hearing that spiel, but thanks for a pre-thanks for you looking at your code of conduct, for you talking about it with your team, because it's truly going to help so much. Oh, actually, I'm going to take this one because it's about office hours, and I love office hours. I missed the last one because I was resting, basically. But so towards the end of March, we are going to be moving into in-season office hours. And a little bit about office hours. Some of you, I'm seeing familiar faces, have been to them. We go every Wednesday night, typically from 7 to 10 p.m. We'll be in a bar in Hollywood. Check out hollywoodfringe.org/events for all the details on where that's happening. Local business partners that we are, having a great time with. Participants will be gathering at office hours. It's a chance to, one, staff is there so you can ask questions directly, but also you get to talk to your fellow peers. Again, 90% of the Hollywood Fringe Festival is hyper local. So 90% of the people that your fellow artists will be here in LA after. So it's just a great time to meet them. I know the year I did Fringe in 2023, I met a ton of amazing people who I still work with and collaborate and hang out with today, which has been really cute. Gina, you want to take the next part?
Yeah, and then I just also want to emphasize, I've also kept up some friends here. I'm like an out-of-state person, and a lot of friends that I still have here in LA are from Hollywood Fringe, office hours, so come join us. It'll be really fun. Okay, 1 month till April 15th left to register and book your venue. Okay, I know it's intimidating. This is like, everyone's a little anxious, like, where am I going to put my show? My show is so amazing. There's so many different spaces it can be performed in, and that's all true, but we have to make a decision. So remember, it's so true, so real, but let's make a decision, friends, so we can continue showing everyone and getting butts in seats of how amazing your show is, right? So to participate, remember, you must complete 3 steps. Create a project, go to hollywoodfringe.org. There you go. 2nd, pay, register with the festival. And then 3, book a venue in the Fringe zone. You can go to our support page on Hollywood Fringe too on all things registration and list everything I just said in way more detail, direct links to all the things you need to know about venues, registration fees, all that fun stuff. And remember, you can register and book your venue in any order as long as you do both by April 15th. That's just like the hard deadline for that. And if you have not booked a venue, start your search again at hollywoodfringe.org/venues. Contact your spaces and apply directly on their site. Tour multiple spaces to find a right fit. Each venue does things a little differently, of course, so just make sure you're in communication with them about what they expect as a show, but also just like communicate with them in the end. Like if you decide not to go with the venue, that's okay. No hard feelings, but let them know because there's so many other artists who may use that space. So we just want to make sure we're just clear in communication. And if you have already booked your venue, know that your venue will add performances to the website. Be patient with them. There's hundreds of shows and only 21 venues, 30-ish spaces. They're moving as quickly as they can. They're so amazing. They understand how important each and everyone's performances, shows are, but just give them a little bit of patience and then don't worry, they've got you taken care of.
Yeah. And then as we're kind of concluding this segment of announcements, so thank you for listening to this portion because it is a lot of announcements and it can be a lot, but I've got some things to answer that if it feels overwhelming. So If you aren't subscribed to the Fringe newsletters, please do so. That you can find that on the website. It'll say newsletter. You click on that. However, we do this year have a artist newsletter as well that is going directly out to artists, and that is written by Jeanette and I, Jeanette and me. One of the things, yeah. But Jeanette and I are writing them, and it kind of gives you like, hey, heads up, here's an upcoming deadline, or hey, office hours is this Wednesday at such and such place. It also will give you Fringe facts. It'll tell you things to be aware of that are upcoming. We'll be shouting out pages from the packet as well. Also, within that newsletter for artists, you'll see a link to schedule a one-on-one with the artist services manager, which is me. And there you can find a space we'll be Zooming for anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, whatever you really need. We can screen share. We can talk about festival experience. We can talk about literally anything. It's a time where participants will come in, ask questions, and gain a little bit more insight into Fringe. I will say that if you have registered your project already, you are opted in automatically to the artist newsletter. And if you would like to bring on your collaborators, please add them to your project page. That will be on, when you pull up that project page and you scroll down, it says like add team members, and you'll be throwing on like their name, their email, and their title connected to the project. Once you submit their email, they will also begin to get artist newsletters, which we find to be super helpful so that everyone's informed and not missing out on any of the details. Brilliant. I covered all that. Oh, yes. And social media. So you'll kind of figure this out in marketing and stuff, and ticketing, which we will get to in a future town hall and workshop. But you can start using the hashtag HFF25 if you'd like. And that's just a ton of fun. It's just a good tool. Right on.
It's a great tool, but especially when the festival starts, that might be a great way for shows that you haven't heard of in office hours or other events. You can look at that hashtag and see, oh, there's this show going on. I want to go see it. Oh, wow, this show is very similar to mine. Maybe I should connect with them and all that fun stuff. So it's a really great way to keep connected with the community, but just kind of keep in the know, because when Fringe starts, it starts crazily, amazingly, but there's so much going on. So we just want to make sure you guys are with us, follow us, Hollywood Fringe, Instagram, all that fun stuff, so you don't miss anything.
Yeah, and you'll find that there's like a lot of information being thrown out in lots of different spaces, but it's truly so you don't miss anything. Honestly, you'll see like, oh, it's either on the website, on the Instagram, on the Facebook. Like, we just don't want anyone missing out on the important things, and that's what we try our best to do. In a variety of ways. I'd also shout out, we have a podcast. And
we have a podcast.
That's super cool too. So there's a lot of ways to ingest this information. But I think that brings us to why we're here today, which is our How to Make Your Fringe Show Accessible presentation and discussion. We'll kind of break into conversation and questions following the slideshow and this discussion. But I think we can just dive into it, right?
I think so.
Great.
Let's do it.
So while we're here on the opening slide, I'll just give you a what is accessibility here at the festival? And oh yeah, you're all. Oh no, the slideshow. Actually, Jeanette, you want to take that first talking point? I'll give you the paper here.
Okay, great. All right. So, Hollywood Fringe Festival's accessibility statement and goals. The Hollywood Fringe is committed to increasing accessibility for audience members of all abilities and backgrounds. This includes disability access and interpretation services, as well as providing clear ideas of what we can and cannot provide as a non-curated, primarily volunteer-run festival. As a festival, we provide resources and workshops, town halls even, to educate, empower, and encourage producers to make their productions as accessible as possible. Each venue and show has its unique conditions, so we rely on the individual producers of each show to accurately report and uphold their own accessibility practices.
Incredible. I pulled it up. I cheated. I pulled it up on the laptop. No. Okay, so talking about our accessibility checklist. Oh, yes. This is everything Jeanette just talked about. There we go. Accessibility flags. We're going to spend some time on this. But when you're creating your project page and, you're going into edit and updating it, you'll notice that there are a couple of flags that you're able to add and select, like content warning and things like that. I'll dive into that in a second. But yeah, these are so many of the accessibility flags that we offer. I believe we'll be updating some of these as well. But for example, with our lovely ASL interpreters today, that is one of the flags. If you have a show, if your whole show is an ASL interpreted, like the whole run, you can add that. But also you can add select performances that are ASL interpreted. And so that will help on the search function when those who need ASL interpreters for their experience here at the festival, they can select that on the search bar, and then your show that is ASL interpreted for that night will be found. Yes, that's just one of the many examples. And we look over here. Oh, yeah. So it's amazing that we're using the accessibility flags because they're crucial. You also do have to follow up on the accessibility flags, right? So again, don't click ASL interpretation if you're not having one, but also know how to work with it. Like some are hard of hearing. And I know our venues here have some of our venues have auditory devices that can help as well. And so that's where communication with your venue is key. Be making sure you're like, oh, hey, I have a will call request, which when we get into ticketing will be a function that you can see where a patron has asked for a device, a listening device. Not all venues offer it, and that's something you should absolutely communicate with them, being like, is this a service you offer? And that might be like a thing you want to make sure is a part of your festival experience for you and your patrons. And then once you've received a request, you can communicate that with your venue, and your venue's like, great, here's our device, here's our technology, here's how we make this experience happen for our audience. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So in addition to providing these accessibility flags and just to let people know what your show's about, we also encourage being a little bit more descriptive in your main project page. You see, it's called long description. The short description, of course, is for the printed guide. And I know words are, there's a commodity when it comes to it. But please know on the longer project page, not a word limit that I know of. I don't think so, right? No. Alan Lowe's have told me no. And Howard isn't here, but he'll be telling me to eat the microphone. So I'm going to get closer. So, right. So let's say, there's a toggle, there's a flag that says content warning. And please use that when you feel so inclined to, when it's necessary. But it doesn't specify what that content warning is, just that it is in place. What you can do on your project page, like when I did mine in 2023, my show contained suicidal ideation and discussion on suicide. And so I brought that up on my longer description. I kind of bolded it or was the first thing there being heads up, this is what that show content is about. As well as there's a couple others like multi-language performance. There's also performances in Spanish or multilingual shows. So a show that is 50% English, 50% Spanish, or however the breakdown happens, you can also raise that as a content flag just so that people know oh, great, I'm a predominantly Spanish speaker. I know I will enjoy this. I know I will connect with it more, which is incredible. That's how they can make their decisions. There is also another one called nudity. And that's not searchable because that would be strange. We just want to make that clear. You can't search for nudity on the website. And we're just, because we don't need to do that. But you can identify your show as containing nudity so that when a patron is buying a ticket, they understand what's happening and know. Yes.
Must identify.
Yes. Yeah, right? Let's see. Let me see if I'm jumping the gun on any of this. Oh, yeah. So you'll also see some venue accessibility flags, right? And so with the venues, some of them are wheelchair accessible and some of them unfortunately aren't. And that's just the nature of some of these theaters in Los Angeles. Again, that's something you want to be aware of. I know that some venues have ADA compliant plans in place where their theater space is ADA compliant, but they may not have an ADA compliant restroom. And so they've partnered with a business down the street, a business across the street to make sure that that is provided. Again, follow up with your venue, check in with them on whoever you're wanting to make a contract with, and that will give you a better sense of what they can offer and what they can't. We already covered assisted listening devices, ADA compliant restrooms. Yeah, size inclusive seating, same thing. It's just a conversation with your venue. And obviously most of you will be touring spaces with your venue and checking in, seeing it for yourself, knowing what they're able to accomplish and what they're not. But honestly, with the initial journey with flags is just talking to the venue and seeing what's able to be provided. Yeah, I think. You want me to take it? Okay, cool. Yeah. I'm on a roll here. Yeah. So I briefly mentioned it, but I was speaking top of my head. This actually details how to add a flag. So when you add a flag, oh, brilliant. When you're adding a flag, you're going to go to your project page, which is that space where you're uploading photos, where your long description lives, where you're adding your team members, right? So you'll go into your administrative side of it, which only you can see as the primary producer, and any other party you've opted into that. So your cast members probably won't be able to see that unless you allow them access. Clicking on the admin tab, clicking on the individual show you want to edit, unless it's like a general content warning, you can apply that to the whole show. But like we're saying, for ASL interpretation, it might be a one performance only event. So that's where you'll be going to edit that in. And then again, check any features your show may have, whether that's everything we just talked about. Let's see. Yep. And like we said, we're working on the site right now and always continually updating it and listening back to what artists have said they would like, which is why we have like drop down menus, which I'm so happy about. But also the search functions. You're able to find anything that you really want to, except for nudity. Can't do that one for good reason. And yeah, that's how that all works out. I think we can go to the next slide. And yeah, do you want to talk about this? Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
All right. So definitions. So just so you guys know what we're talking about when we're talking about accessibility terms, so we're all dealing with the same vernacular. Relaxed environment / sensory friendly performance. Performance with slight adjustments, including the reduction of any jarring sounds or intense lighting, plus a separate quiet area and activity area for those who need to leave their seats during the performance. Specify for those who need to leave their seats during, specify on the project page which dates these performances will take place on. Learn more about what to expect at a relaxed performance and why to offer sensory-friendly performances if you select this option list on your project page, what adaptations you will make to give as much information as possible to those searching for this option.
Yeah, and then speaking a little bit to the practicum of that, when I've been in shows and I've attended like relaxed environments or sensory friendly performances, that includes a lot, and I encourage you to do your own research and endeavor. My experience that I've seen as an audience member has been like leaving the house lights on in case of blackouts, like kind of like what we're seeing today where we have a house light situation going on. It also is like toning back strobes. If you've planned shows that have strobe lights, removing those cues for that performance. Additionally, I've seen like, let's say your sound system, your sound cues are all at 100%. Toning them back to 50 so those are some things I've commonly seen that are easy like solutions to things without interrupting your intent of your show or everything your show's about. Hey, well, you're in the right place. Just feel free. Come. Welcome to the Accessibility Town Hall. I'm going to move on and talk about, yes, live ASL interpreted performances and captioning available. So just like at this town hall, we have our lovely ASL interpreters helping us out today from Sign Language Company. They're listed in the packet. You can reach out to them. We also have a couple other options for ASL interpreters. And it's all about getting that conversation started. Like they, hopefully sending in a script beforehand, giving them an idea of what the show's about, finding placement. Obviously, like you're developing the show and you're taking the stage, but you also want to be like, hey, this is how it's going to go. We're going to have either a light on you or making sure you're not going to be in darkness so that people can see the ASL interpretation happening in real time. And again, just like on those flags, listing if you're able to accomplish like all the performances will be interpreted, or if it's like, no, I can only at this time provide an interpretation for one show. But like making that very clear and also like putting it on like where everyone's following. So like if you're creating an Instagram page or a Facebook page, like making sure you're telling, hey, Saturday night at 6 p.m., this show will be interpreted. And that's, yeah, if you need to know, now you know. Captioning available. So there's a couple different ways of going about with captioning. Some of the venues provide live streams, and you can work with the venue. You can try to get on top of how do you provide captioning for those live streams. I would also say, and this is actually something I did for my show, because it was a bilingual show, we provided some captioning. Some captioning. So when we had things on Spanish, we worked with our venue, made sure they had a projector. We programmed our cues on QLab. It takes some time, but it's very worth it so that the audience doesn't feel lost and they're also enjoying that experience. Typically, like, I mean, I just in my frame of reference, I see it all the time when I go to operas. In the few times that I go to operas, I'm not going every weekend. But like, like they're provided at the top or at the bottom, and your tech team to figure out how to solve that is a great way. Let me see. Awesome. Jeanette, you want to take this one?
Yes. All right, audio description. So, this is something you can put for your project in terms of accessibility. The performance will be accompanied by live or pre recorded narration on what is happening on stage, primarily visual performance. The production will be mainly visual, containing little to no dialogue, music, or sounds. Audiences can fully engage with and experience the show without any of the auditory elements, primarily sound performance. In this performance will mainly be auditory. Audience can fully engage and experience the show without the visual elements.
Well, yeah, I was going to talk about this here because when it comes to primarily visual performances, it kind of leans itself to muddy waters, and I just want to like kind of bring some examples because I understand where like people are coming from when they're saying like, "Oh, my farce is super like slapstick comedy fueled and it can be enjoyed with a primarily visual performance." And it's kind of a gray area because, yes, that can be applicable, but there is also a lot of dialogue going on. I would recommend if your show is like a dance heavy show or like truly, if you are not having a bunch of dialogue in your show and it is truly a visual performance, this is really the tag for you or the flag for you. I'll also say primarily sound productions or performances. One that comes to mind is there was a really cool show in years prior that was all a like everyone sat in a theater. They pulled two audience members and everyone had headphones and you're on channel 1 or channel 2. That was a completely auditory experience with like audiences providing some movement on stage, but everyone was just collectively experiencing an auditory experience. And that closer. Okay, Haverty. Okay. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. You'll meet Haverty. No, you're good. You're good for the live stream. And actually, I think for those here right now, you might not have met Haverty. He's our wonderful videographer, taking a bunch of photos as well. You'll see him at a ton of events following within the festival. And he's also just helping us out a ton in how to like teach me how to use a microphone. Genuinely. I'm going to keep moving on. Oh, no, of course.
Just want to add a quick note as we continue with flags, specifically with these definitions and flags as well. Just remember, obviously, we all want to make our shows as independent artists as accessible as possible. I think that's a great goal to have. But especially for this, the goal isn't to have as many flags as possible. It's not about, you know what I mean? It's just make sure that, like, if you do put any flags, like, people really do listen in, like, and really take that into consideration if this is something they look for their best enjoyment of your performance. So if you really just like Roddy said, like think about like primarily visual, it probably leans towards more like a physical theater piece. Like just really think about like, does this definition actually accurately describe my show? You know, just so audience members are very clear about what they're getting to before they sit down in your show. That will continue. Just want to put that note in there.
Thank you. That's incredible. Yes. So we've got sensory advisory, flashing lights, smoke and haze. A lot of these are also venue conversations. So, but let's talk about sensory advisory first. So, yeah, again, there have been shows that have a very loud noise at the very beginning to kick it all off, or somewhere else in their run, in their performance. It is really important to label it because it's like, you know, for your average theater goer, they might jump in their seat, but it also can be a lot of unnecessary stress for your audience, and that's a moment where you have to differentiate like, is this a sensory warning? Is there lead up to this noise, or is it truly like a high volume noise? I will also say about volume levels, we have a lot of phenomenal venues here. Some of them, like the Broadwater here, are 4 theaters in this space. So something to just be courteous about with your fellow artist is noise bleed. So right now we're here at the second stage. Right next to us, though, is the black box. And shortly over there is the studio and then the main stage. Like, they're all pretty close. So just being courteous of your fellow participants, because, again, theaters will be running all day for the whole month. And you don't want to have your neighbor being like, hey, I'm so sorry, but, like, that's really, really loud. And, like, it's a conversation, but, like, just be aware of your performance, your production, getting along with the rest of those in that space. Flashing lights. We kind of talked about it a little bit with strobe effects and how you can tone those down or accommodate them. But also, you know, in your traditional show, like if there is a ton of flashing, just list that out. I know that I've had shows where we blast the audience with light, and it's something that we very, very are adamant about letting our audience know, like, this is going to happen at a moment. For whatever reason within the show, it's built that way. It just helps the audience out a ton. I also wouldn't recommend, like I did that very early in my theater days where I was like, I'm going to blast them with lights. nobody likes it. Especially if the queue messes up, you're just hitting them with light for a while, and it's like, was it worth it? Was it necessary? I don't know. Anyway, lastly is smoke and haze. I will actually add an additional one to this, unless I'm jumping the gun. But speaking to smoke and haze, yes, list this on your page. Like, be aware of people with breathing issues and asthma. Also, you must talk to your venue about this because every venue is different on how they handle it. I know there's conversations around like, oh, but this is a water-based smoker or smoke machine. It still needs to be talked about with your venue. Don't assume anything. That's truly like the best advice. Because, yeah, you don't want the fire marshal coming to your performance, or because your performance is an hour long, coming to the next performance and being like, oh, that show wrapped already. And you don't want to ruin someone else's show. And having your venue know about that is super helpful so that they can communicate whatever needs to happen. I was going to say something else about this. Oh, oh. I might be jumping the gun and we may be talking about it in a second, but also like as a content warning, but also as a communication with your venue. And a lot of them already have like checklists and things to talk about. But like if there's a lot of liquid being thrown on the stage, I'm coming to mind this phenomenal Fringe show that had a watermelon on stage and then they broke it on stage and it was a whole thing. But they came in with a plan. They came in, the whole floor was tarped. It was part of the show that they collected the pieces. Like, again, you traditionally have 15 minutes of load in, 15 minutes of load out. And it's just like, if you want to accomplish these big things or these outside of the box things, talk to your venues 100%, but also come in with a plan to offer your venue. Like, I'm assuming most venues have plans in place, but if you can begin that conversation, be like, I've thought about this. Here's a way that I have solved this. Is that within the parameters of the theater? Do you have a better plan? Do you have another solution? And also a lot of these venues have done Fringe before and have seen a lot of out there things. I know another thing is like blood on stage and what kinds of blood, and even if that's allowed, not every venue will allow this. And so it's like, well, what's your cleanup plan? What are you going to do in those 15 minutes? Or is it cleaned up within the performance? Like having those questions, having those answers at the ready is super helpful. Hey, come on in. You're in the right spot. Brilliant. I'm gonna let you take the next one and let's see what's there.
Let's see what's there. Oh, this is a good one. All right. Priority early access seating. An announcement will be made that any patron who needs more time getting to their seats will be given a chance to enter the venue early before general admission seating. That way, they'll be able to find specific seating based on their access needs. Live streaming performances, kind of like how we're live streaming this town hall right now. Live streaming your performance provides a unique opportunity for your show to be accessible to those who might not otherwise be able to attend an in-person performance. I will say for a priority early access seating, when I worked with Fringe in the last festival, that was something I was working on a lot with people contacting shows, producers letting them know like, hey, someone on your show needs priority access seating. Like, are you aware? Okay, great. It's a really great resource. I will say as a patron, I've had my fair share of injuries and I've needed that in times of my life. And I went to go see a Fringe show for my friend and they had this available. And I was like, wait, really? That was one of like the biggest like nervous things for me is attending the show. So it was like it made me feel better about going to see the show, knowing that I had time to just kind of get myself situated, not feel rushed, because Fringe is very go, go, go. But so I think that's a great thing to consider for your show. And then, of course, live stream performances. I mean, that's just great all around. I think we all learned during COVID. And now that like live streaming anywhere possible is a really great accessibility tool. I mean, when I did my show, you don't have to live stream every performance. I think that might be pushing it. I mean, but hey, do what you want to do. But I would say I got to live stream one of my performances, and not only were people that I know who were, trying to stay conscious of their health, able to actually see my show, but, depending on how your live stream would work, I had people from my family from like all over the country got to see it. Like there's just so many great access for it. So you kind of win in a lot of ways, and your audience members win too and get to, see your show, whether or not they could be here in person or not. But yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah, adding to that with like frame of mind of what Fringe is. So talking about priority access seating, keep in mind that your show, typically the norm is that you have 15 minutes to load in. That also is inclusive of your patron seating, getting them into the theater. So I know the year that I did it, I learned so much. I learned so much, truly, where we had the audience file in the final 3 minutes. We didn't have a priority access seating moment, but like that is something that I regret having not thought at that point. And it's something I wish, like, oh, if this did happen, would have a game plan. The other thing is it's Fringe. And if someone is coming in and needs priority access seating during your setup time, like, let it happen. It's okay. The Fringe magic is not broken if they're seeing you set up a table or a couple blocks or getting ready to perform the show. With live stream performances, not every venue has the Wi-Fi strength to do so. The venue I was in wasn't able to. So instead, what I did is I was looking through the participant packet, and that supplied a wide array of individuals who were filming shows for a discounted rate. A lot of the discounts in the participant packet are a lot of the offers, in the participant packet are discounted. So you'll see graphic designers that have a regular rate, and they're like, actually, we're going to do $20 off, 10% off, 15% off. And same thing goes for videographers and photographers. And as a result, because I wasn't able to do a live stream, I instead recorded the show. And then we sent it out to those that weren't able to see it. And we're like, here's like a pro shot where and when you do that, you do have to keep in mind with your seating, like, oh, right, so the camera's going to be in this spot. I need to remove one ticket from what's available to be sold. I know that I was very lucky to have like a very well-attended show. So it really became a priority being like, the camera needs a spot. The camera needs access ahead of time to set up. Because again, it's 15 minutes. Like, okay, camera gets in first. They set up. They have any questions, which are hopefully discussed prior. And then the audience, and again, comes in with the camera already in place. And you may find yourself wanting one standard shot. You may want multiple. Talk to whoever you're asking to film your show. But make sure you have seats for them because it's just important. Brilliant size-inclusive seating. So we kind of talked about this at the beginning as well, but seating options are available for all body shapes and sizes. So again, it's kind of this thing of like letting the patron will notify you that they would like to have size-inclusive seating. Many of our venues do offer it, which is amazing. Sometimes it comes to a seat that has a removable armrest, a detachable one, or a flexible one that can help. Bench-style seating, from what we've heard, is the most accessible form of seating for many of the patrons. I think that there are options of adding seats to many of the theater venues, keeping in mind fire regulation and safety, but oftentimes they're a little bit bigger, so they can accommodate an extra row here and there. And just ask them if they have bench-style seating available, because you could put like a regular foldable chair system, but you could also say like, hey, do you have a couple of like boxes that I'm not using in my show that I'd love to lay out? Whatever works to accomplish that. And yes, so again, it's, if nothing else leaves this accessibility meeting, it's flags and talking with your venue and keeping that strong level of communication, because there you can ask, hey, venue, what's your depth of seat? Like, how much legroom is there? How wide is it? All that good stuff.
All right. On-site ADA compliant restroom. So inside the venue is an accessible restroom with proper signage that complies with California's ADA guidelines. Learn more about the requirements, which I guess we will have there. I just realized. Yeah, so that's something to communicate with your venue too, as you talk to them, like ask them, like, do they have ADA compliant restrooms? If they don't, again, like Roddy mentioned earlier, they probably know of a place nearby that does, and they have a plan in place. So just make sure you are educated on what that is, what they have available, so you can communicate that with your audience. Wheelchair accessible seating. The venue has wheelchair accessible hallways, entrances, and seating. For venues with stairs, note if there's access to a working elevator or ramp. So yes, not just about the seating, but does someone who does need to use a wheelchair, are they able to even get into the stage? What is that like for them? Just making sure they have full access to be able to be seated for your show. And assisted listening devices available. So hearing devices to amplify the sounds on stage. Many of our venues are equipped with assisted listening devices or hearing loop system. Again, if that's something you're interested in, communicate with your venue. See if that's something they provide and what's the word I'm looking for, like mode of action for them to get that started with your production.
Absolutely. And I know I jumped the gun on some of these because we kind of already talked about it, so my bad. But to add to this, so when it comes to ADA compliant restrooms, your venues will absolutely know if their spaces have ADA compliant restrooms. It's their business to know. So whereas it may not be your business to fully know the ins and outs of that, your venue knows if that restroom they have is accessible, if it's big enough to be considered accessible. The wheelchair accessible seating, yes. So that it's an account of like the getting there and navigating in the space. Oh man, I must have blanked. There was something else about, this is tangential, but it's super important to note. And something I'm just going to throw in that's adjacent to the accessibility, but it's about when you're bringing in things into the theater, often the the question that many participants do is like, oh, can I fill everything into this theater in 15 minutes? And it's a bigger question than that. Like everyone understands the modified sets that you can do here and like, or like just like the gestural moments that you can have. Like a table could be so many things. But also like how do you navigate your set into the space? I just want to make everyone aware of that because there are guidelines at Fringe and rules that can be broken and expressed in creative ways. It's just like definitely having at least like 3 backup plans. I'm speaking here from my direct experience in 2023 where I did go, I think I made like 5 plans to know the ins and outs of everything because Fringe just moves so fast. Yeah, I'm going to move on to the next one because Jeanette, you covered it. The accessibility checklist. Amazing. Flags that apply. Not every flag will apply to your production, and that's okay. You may not need a content warning, but it's truly important to know that what you think is a content warning probably is a content warning. I mean, that's just the rule of thumb. Honestly, it's better to be overly cautious than less cautious. And understanding that like a lot of shows may have, I mean, my show talked about very traumatic experiences or discussions, and that was something I very much needed my audience to know because where as a patron I sometimes like to go in surprised, it is a different ballgame when you're talking about more intense subject matters, and so it is better to land on the side of caution than not. Oh, I'm actually going to go back 2 steps and talk about assisted listening devices. That's what I forgot about. So your venue may have sometimes, depending on which venue you're scheduling, have assisted listening devices. Again, like all things, do not tell them the day of that you need an assisted listening device. Again, some venues have 1 space, and that's the only space. Some theaters have 4, 3, like multiple spaces, and if the earlier you can tell them, the better they can prepare. It is not advised that you tell your venue honestly anything day of. Don't leave any surprises for the end. And you might think things aren't surprises. I'm gonna jump the gun again just because I'm always doing it. But like when it comes to weapons and anything that even remotely looks like a weapon, talk to your venue. Again, there's also like a bunch of like, I would recommend looking at like the equity standards of how to handle a weapon, but also keep in mind your frame of reference of like what constitutes a weapon. And even like, a wooden toy sword, that is a weapon. And it needs to be handled with care, and it needs to be communicated to your venue that you're bringing it into their space. That is super important, and your venue they can approve it, they can talk about it, and they may come up with better solutions or ask that you do not bring whatever thing you're bringing into their space. It really is just as much your level of comfortability, that venue's level of comfortability. And we just ask that both parties respect each other there. That was the 2 cents I was going to say about that. Yes. One more thing about accessibility flags that we've already talked about is if you are offering an accessibility flag, know how you're going to offer it. If you have ASL interpreters, know how to communicate to them for when to be at the show. Example, if your show, like because Fringe is a well-oiled machine, if your show starts at 3:00 and it's an hour long, it's gonna start at 3 and be an hour long. Otherwise, it just delays the whole process because there are multiple theaters in a venue. So tell your ASL interpreter, please arrive 15 minutes beforehand. Meet me on the street outside the theater right as we're all loading in. Talk to them beforehand about where they're going to be placed. Have a lighting cue possible shining on them so that people can see the interpretation going on. That's what we mean by game plan. And we've kind of talked about this too, but it truly like leading with honesty being the best policy. Sorry.
It's true.
I felt like a school teacher then. I was like, it's true though, and nobody gets mad when you're being honest for the most part, But when talking about accessibility flags, truly, if you really aren't able to accommodate a need, you can message them through the system, being like, "I'm so sorry. At this time, we just can't. We can't accommodate this request." And I understand that it can be rough not being able to provide accessibility to everyone, but also you don't want to have a patron attend your show and be disappointed because they didn't get the experience that they were hoping to get in watching your wonderful artistry on stage. Yeah. You want to take that one? Oh, did I get it? Ooh. I believe we break down the slideshow at hollywoodfringe.org/accessibility. It's not really in this colored fashion. We kind of provide it in a more document style where it's like paragraph broken up a little bit. But yes, hollywoodfringe.org/accessibility. And we can also, I mean, there's nothing stopping us from adding it too.
Why not?
So, yeah.
This
Cool.
Perfect. All right. 3, confirm your venue's accessibility flags are up to date, and accurate for your performances. So again, like we've been saying this whole town hall, we're going to keep saying this for every workshop, anything we do in the future, just communicate with your venues. Like they know what they're doing. They have to keep up to date on everything, like, and know exactly how their venue works for patrons and all that fun stuff. So just communicate with them. Make sure, like, let them know, like, should I do this? Like, would that actually make sense? Is that something we can provide? Yeah. I promise you, they are more than excited to let you know and communicate what they're able to provide. And 4, ensure that your actors, box office, and production crew know your show's accessibility plans for audience members as well as what they can expect. So, same thing like what Roddy was saying earlier, when you make a project page, make sure that any team member should also make a Hollywood Fringe account and be added onto the project page so they can receive like artist newsletters and all that stuff, but also really keep up to date about all the ins and outs of how the shows work. It's just really good for everyone to know too. I think it's just good practice, especially if it's your first time producing a show, which is super exciting. We have a lot of first time producers at Fringe. This is a great thing to learn. It's like, okay, like I'm using this venue and they don't have an ADA compliant restroom on by. Okay, that's good for me to know. Okay, so how should we have someone to direct someone to this location that they let, like all that fun stuff. It's just really good to know the ins and out, yes, of the show itself and the production, all your cues, but like the beginning process of getting your audience members, and then when they leave. I know this maybe we might be mentioning this later if not, but even like parking, I know that'll be included later in marketing, like in ticketing and stuff, but just think about parking too. Like that's a huge, I mean, accessibility, and just also we live in LA. So just make sure people know, because that does take time as well. So anyway.
Yeah, 2 things I'll add, because if parking is not covered in the future sections we'll just talk about right now, it's super helpful to know on the project page when tickets go on sale May 1st, people will begin buying tickets. Also, don't panic if it's May 2nd and nobody's bought a ticket. People sometimes buy tickets the week of, the day of. Yeah, it happens. But as people go along and purchase tickets, you will be able to message them directly. And what we advise is either a 24 hours in advance, sometimes it's the morning of, but like truly reach out to them. Also, it doesn't hurt to email them twice directly to talk about, hey, my performance starts at 2:00. Here is the address. Here's what you need to know. You may do some personal research and be like, oh, I know that there is often parking available on X and Y streets. Please be on time. Honestly, that that messaging system also serves extraordinarily helpful to be like, hey, this is Fringe. Not every audience member knows about Fringe. You have to be in the mindset of you have to be there on time. Sometimes there are shows that you may find yourself attending or producing where the venue opens up, like the entrance to the theater opens up to the stage. And this did happen to me a couple times where we said we will not be seating any late comers because it interrupts the flow of the show and we don't have that built in. And there were moments where we closed the door and people missed out. And again, you can accommodate, like I'm sure they'll reach out to you being like, I'm so sorry I missed the show. Is there any way I can see it? And you can take that conversation elsewhere and try to figure out how to get them back into your theater if you really want them to come see the show. And then we were talking about accessibility plans. Just like every venue is different. Some of the venues can accommodate your box office. Some cannot. When you're negotiating a contract, it'll be listed that, oh, this venue, they requested that they maintain all of the box office like in person, meaning you will send them their will call and any accessibility requests will be sent to them earlier. Some of them, however, are like, no, we don't have the infrastructure or the capacity to handle your box office. It says so in the contract. Just double check what the language is. And so either you're informing the venue or you're informing your friend or your box office manager who's running that for you ahead of time. Those are the 2 things I just wanted to add to that. That's so funny. You'll meet Wiley as you like experience your time at the festival, and he helped us like create these because this was a lot of his brainchild and wanting the accessibility things to come out. I didn't realize they were both pink and green. It's just giving me Wicked vibes, and that's not super important right now, but I just wanted to let you know that's what I was thinking. Do you want to talk about? Yeah,
I would love to talk about Wicked. No, I'll talk about content warning. So A warning audiences can view on your project page prior to purchasing tickets, stating if the production will contain potentially triggering / harmful content. Content warnings play an important role in ensuring your audience feels safe, prepared, and has the choice to protect themselves from discussion or portrayal of potentially harmful topics. Roddy mentioned this earlier. For his show he did at Fringe, he put suicidal ideation. My show also had suicidal ideation. I made that very clear. I also just talked about death a lot and grief. So I just said, hey, we talk a lot about grief and death. Like, if that is the whole show. So if that, so my honest members know if they don't want to come see that show, that is totally fine. But they made the choice to protect themselves and say, I'm not going to see that. It's really important. I just think it's really important. It's just really good. It's also just good, like, to really think about your show from like an objective standpoint of like, okay, so like if I was someone walking in trying to see the show, like what would pop out at me? It's just really, I think it's just really good to communicate. And again, everyone in your team should be aware of these content warnings too. But yeah.
I'll also add that there are some shows that have audience interaction. Of course, the immersive shows it's very much more implied that it's more interactive. But there have been many shows at Fringe that are solo or ensemble shows that bring an audience member on stage. There's a whole discussion about how to go about doing that. We never just want to be like, come with me on stage. It's like, no. Let's roll it back. And like, maybe it's like extend an arm, or if you, sometimes the performers aren't able to vocalize as per their show. But of course, some of them are like, could you please join me on stage? And no is an acceptable answer. If you want to notify your audience, you can say like, hey, just so you know, there are moments in which I bring on an audience member. If that is something you are open to, feel free to sit in the front row. I know that there are just a couple of audience members who are a bit skittish about being interacted with in that way. And so they're like, actually, let me sit in the back so I won't be selected, which is totally fine. And it's just getting everyone to enjoy theater the way they want to and the way that you've explained to them that you are performing your show. Moving on. Yes. So talking more about this on the content warnings, right? We've talked about the best practices of on the flags, you can select them, but content warning is very general. That is one of the flags. And like we've said, talking about how our shows were both about death. I set my show in hell, so there was a lot to notify people about. Yeah, I was like, we're gonna go through like it was like about Inferno. So we're gonna go through lust. We're gonna go through all these very, very intense levels of hell, and we just had to outline it. We'd be like, hey, we're gonna be talking about a lot of things tonight, and that can all be tackled in the long description. And the long description, we've talked about it a little bit as well, where April 15th, that's the guide deadline. Your short description cannot be fine-tuned after that because it goes to print. The long description can be edited. It's a place to put larger descriptions of those content warnings, but also it's a place where you can insert, if you got good reviews, if you got awards and accolades before the festival's over, just be conscious of how you're ordering everything. I do feel like the content warnings personally should go first. It won't take a bunch of real estate. The site on full view or even in partial view provides a lot of space for that. But I just would speak to putting content warnings first and then reviews or like a synopsis of your show that you can put a little lengthier in there. It really does become something that participants during the festival use quite a bit and that audience members will absolutely be looking at because it's also where the ticketing portion of the website is per show. Yes, and like we said, like we've talking about is diving into what it means to have that content warning. If we're talking about suicide ideation, if you feel so inclined to explain a little bit more, or if you're talking about death and themes of death, like it's about like the loss of a parent. And again, like being as descriptive as possible and what you're comfortable with and what the audience is comfortable with is super helpful. Just the more information you're able to provide is just always the best route, I think.
Yeah.
Do you want to add to, should I move the next one? Yes, here we go.
Should I?
Yes, please.
All right. So these are just some examples. It's not the full list that you could put on your project, but just some examples of topics that require content warnings. Rape and or sexual assault, abuse, whether that's physical, mental, verbal, sexual, self-harm, suicide, violence, death and or dying, pregnancy and or childbirth, miscarriages and or abortion, and blood. Yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, if any of your shows have that, please, you need to put that on your project page. People, audience members need to know about that.
Absolutely. I actually think it goes on. It continues. Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot. And because we've been around for 15 years. And
we've learned.
And I wish we could say that all of this existed before 15 years.
Nope.
But it didn't. And we've learned a lot. Yeah, I mean, every year there's
Every year,
more
we're
changes.
learning.
We're continually growing, and also like continually taking artist feedback. I mean, towards the
Yes.
end of the festival, you'll see there'll be like a final town hall, which is really an open discussion about artist experiences. That has been such a helpful tool for us to respond. For us to respond. For us to respond directly to what the community is speaking to. But I'll just continue on with this list. So we have, torture, jump scares, mental illness, eating disorders or diet culture, and any kind of discrimination and or bigotry, including, racism, homophobia, transphobia, sexism, ableism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. All of those terrible things, it's good to know to let your audience know that you are diving into those subjects, as well as drug, alcohol, or substance abuse, police brutality, and fake or mimed gun or weapon use. I feel like the faked gun use one doesn't get discussed too often. It's super important. Again, it's just something that you really need to notify. And there's a full range of artists that we talked to again about this. But like, if you are making your hand into the shape of a gun and you are treating it as a gun, it should be in your content warnings. I understand that sometimes it can be used in more comical matters, but we do ask that you list that and you display that. And even if you want to explain like it's used in this context, like by all means provide that information, because it's important. And like, it's nobody's really at fault, because sometimes you just forget. Sometimes and that's why we're providing this town hall and providing this accessibility discussion, because it's that you don't know what you don't know about. And you don't know that you could be affecting someone until you find out. And we don't want that to be an uncomfortable realization. We would like to preemptively notify you about how to provide the best experience for your artists, for your fellow artists and your audiences. Yay! Jeanette, I don't know why I didn't say anything. Do you want to tackle this one?
I was like, oh, he got so excited. Okay. Personal accessibility request. Through the website, patrons have the option to make a personal accessibility request, which will be communicated to the producer or producers of that show. It is up to the discretion of the individual producer or producers if they are able to accommodate the request or not. So some examples may be brighter house lighting during seating, large print program, extra assistance getting to their seat, copy of the script prior to performance, civic seating request, for example, front row for hard of hearing or visually impaired patrons. Again, just like we've mentioned, I think throughout this whole town hall and even at the beginning, don't just say yes for the sake of getting someone in your seat. Like, they really are genuinely gauging, like, is this going to be something that they're going to enjoy? Is this something that they're going to enjoy in the ways that they are specifically asking you? So just make sure you're keeping track of your emails, any requests you get through. Just be honest with them. It's okay. I promise you, sure, they'll be sad not to see your amazing show, but at least they'll know that okay, this wasn't going to be a great performance for me to sit in and watch anyways. We just want to make sure our audience members are comfortable.
Yeah, and speaking to what I cannot provide, it's not all the time that Fringe shows have print programs, let alone large print programs. So if that's not something you're able to accomplish, if it's really not in your budget, again, but you should be in the phase right now of budgeting and seeing what you want to provide. You could just let them know, I'm sorry, we don't have a large print program. We only have a QR code digital program. And that's another way of accommodating or suggesting an accommodation, because it's not really it's not what they requested, but it's another solution that you can offer. I will also say I have personal experience from copy of the script sent prior to the performance. Honestly, I just thought it was a really fun request to do. I thought it was very sweet, because it's like, oh, wow, this audience member really wants to know what my show's about and wants to come in. And often it's like, there's a language barrier that... There's something on the mic. Okay. The accessibility request is sometimes we have audience members that aren't able to comprehend what's going on in live time super fast. Not everyone's first language is English, and it can be difficult. So if you're able to provide that script to them ahead of time, I find it very, very endearing and very, very yes, you really want to know what my show's about. I'm so happy to provide that, and I'm so glad they felt comfortable asking for that, because it can be a big ask. I think that there's a lot of humility in asking for this, and a big honor in able to provide that, if you are able to provide that, I should say. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the show is improv, and then you have to explain to them we don't really have a script, we have a structure. That's another thing. I know there are some improv shows, or there are moments of improv. Letting your audience know that too, because I've seen a lot of that happen at Fringe. The great improvised moments, but it's not really a script thing. Brilliant. So through the website, you'll be able to directly communicate with everyone. This is when we talked about parking notification. How do you, the website has its own messaging system, right? Also, I've used it as well because, we're in the month of June and we're in Hollywood. There's a lot going on. I think one day I was performing my show. There was a Hollywood premiere. The Hollywood Bowl was performing, and then they closed off another street in the Hollywood area for a pride parade. So a lot was going on, right? So I had to notify all my patrons, being like, listen, we always say to be here, 30 minutes early. Listen, I'm going to have to ask everyone or just notify them. This is what's happening in Hollywood. It's going to be very difficult to navigate the streets. It's going to be even more difficult to find parking. Communicating to them, all of that is super necessary and helpful that, you perform to the house that you planned on. If you sold 60 tickets, I really hope that 60 people are able to enter that audience when your time for your show comes. Similar vein on accessibility, you'll be able to let them know what the performance will entail if they haven't checked in on your project page. Also, you can remind them about where the box office is, which for some theaters, they only have one box office. For others, like the one we're at here, I believe that every artist functions as their own box office. And you have to tell them we are the main stage. Our box office will be located outside of the theater, located on this side street. Don't get confused because there are other shows performing. And it has happened. It has happened where an audience member is like, I'm in the wrong show. And they still have a great time, hopefully. But, mishaps happen.
Okay. I've almost watched the wrong show before. I was sitting. Yeah, it's happened to me where I was like, this is not right. And that's okay. That's okay. And, if I fully read the email, I would have known. So just make sure you have those emails or messages detailed for your patrons. All right. So these are some good box office practices. Clear directions and signage. Again, probably there were when that day that I went into the wrong show, I just didn't read them. That's my fault, but that's user error. Consider your audience's experience. Be hyper aware of not tokenizing audience members with accessibility requests, while also working your hardest to ensure their access need is met. Remember that it is better to be clear about what you can and cannot offer audience members than to promise something to a ticket buyer you cannot come through on. Like we've been saying pretty much, I think these last two bullet points are really much just, again, it's not about being like, yes, I'm going to be the most accessible show in the world. And if you can, cool. But that's not what it's about. It's about just communicating with your audience, being realistic about your show and what it can provide. And, it's okay. It's people may be disappointed. Maybe you'll be disappointed. Maybe you realize, okay, you know what I realized after my run this year at Fringe, this was something a lot of people asked about. Okay, now I know. Next time around, I'm going to do this or have this available. It's just good for all of us to learn. But again, it's not about having the most flags. It's just about being clear and concise about what you are able to provide and not able to provide.
Yes, and I'll speak to a little bit about the third point there, because we as a staff, when we were talking with Wiley about this, we were like, this feels a little like we're trying to say something that we're lacking the verbiage for. Yeah. But essentially, when we're talking about tokenizing an audience member, we're just saying treat them as an average audience member. Do not, and I don't think anyone would go this far, but you don't need to go out of your way to self-congratulate yourself for being so accessible. I'm just saying. But also when you have an audience member and let's say they need early entry, bring them into the audience, allow them to get ready for the show. There's just a level of respect and hospitality you can offer without being clingy, I should say.
Clingy, overwhelming, even to the audience member. It's just, we're all people. We all have different needs in life. This audience member has specific needs for your show. Communicate with them.
Exactly. So that's really what that third one's about. We're still working on the verbiage of that.
Yes.
And we just felt it was necessary to kind of explain that a little bit more. Great. So, yes, this is talking about gun safety again. And not following these guidelines will result in you being prohibited from presenting as a part of the festival, which is awful. And I would never want to see that happen to any of our participants where either they consciously did it or they didn't know about it. And that's really what we want to solve here. So again, only non-firing guns, replicas, are permitted in use in the Hollywood Fringe Festival shows, and they should never be pointed in the direction of the audience members. I would also speak to never be pointed at fellow actors on stage. Again, there's that trick where, if you have a gun, you're pointing it, yes, exactly, at a diagonal. The audience will never know if it's pointed at a diagonal. Also pointing it above audience heads, and that works well too. The Fringe provides blanket recommendations on how to deal with gun safety. Your venue will absolutely, most likely, have more regulation on what they feel comfortable allowing into their space. Because again, you're entering into two contracts. A contract with the Hollywood Fringe Festival, that's where your registration comes into play. but you're also entering into a contract with your venue, negotiating performances, rehearsal, tech, whatever is in that contract. And weapon safety will absolutely be a part of that. I don't know a single venue that's like, yeah, bring in whatever you want. No, they're on top of it. And they have a level of comfort just as any other audience member would. We also briefly touched on this as well. Physical interaction must be consented to, both in rehearsals and performances. Audience members should have the ability to engage or opt out for any interaction. For those of us on the live stream or in person here who are working on immersive shows, I would recommend checking out one of the early workshops that we had that's now on YouTube, which all dived into immersive work and how to go about that. But also, like I said before, there are moments where there is a clown piece that interacts with an audience, and you have to understand how to navigate that. And if you have further questions about that, like email support, we'll get those answers to you, because it is a wider discussion about how to connect with an audience. And yes, if they're like, I'm done with this interaction, like I opt out to not be involved, I don't want to be pulled up on stage, that's also fine. And in fact, some of the immersive shows, that I've seen participants who are like, or audience members who are like, I am here to witness, I'm not here to engage, and I still want to experience the immersive theatricality of it all, but just from a different angle, which is also fine. Yes. Great. Final questions? Final questions to ask yourself.
All right, so here's just some questions. What do you think is important for audience members to know before they buy tickets to or attend a performance? What do you do throughout the process to learn about and support the access needs of your team? Why should producers provide a content warning on their project page, and what does that entail? I don't really have much. I think we just went over it all. But yeah, again, it's really just about knowing your show in and out. Again, knowing your show, not just the actual production of it and your cues and all your lines and stuff, but really just about getting people in and getting people to leave. This is something that I like to say when I've done shows in the past or I've directed shows and stuff, but you have a theatrical contract with the artists on stage, there are people in the booth, your tech team, and the audience members. We're all part of the same contract. So and part of that nonverbal contract when we sit in the seat is we all want to feel safe and enjoy a performance, right? So all of this is set in mind, especially when we were talking about just before about guns or really any weapons, not just guns, any sort of weapons. You need to communicate with your venue and they see what they're comfortable with and how that works. But if we don't follow those rules as an audience member, I feel like the contract was broken and then I don't feel very taken care of in the show. So that's all it is about, and we're all learning, but that's why we have these town halls to educate you guys. But yeah.
Absolutely. Moving on to the slide. So yeah, final thoughts on creative solutions to make your Fringe theater unique. I feel like I've talked to a lot of participants. One example, but there's so many other ways. When they're like, I have blood in my show and my venue doesn't want blood in the space, rightfully so. They have a lot of shows. So what can I do? And then there's a little bit of brainstorming session. And I can really only speak when I talk to artists about what other fringers have done in the past. Because again, we're administrative staff. We're not necessarily wanting to suggest creative decisions. I can just say in the past, artists have used a satin red fabric as blood, or they've used some sort of confetti, which also must be talked about with your venue. If you decide to use confetti or glitter or whatnot, all of that stuff still has to be talked about with your venue. It's also just things to keep in mind, because if you shoot confetti off, you're gonna have to clean it up in 15 minutes or less, unless you have another conversation with the venue and they have different rules. But typically, everything you're throwing on stage, you're picking up. You have to. And then yes, increase your audience by making performances accessible to your community. Well, that means having an ASL interpreted night, but also finding the workarounds that work best for you. If you can't live stream, how can you record? If you can't do X, how can you do Y? Work within your means. I really want to preface that as being really important. Yes, like you've been saying, we want to be the most accessible we can as independent producers, but there are unfortunate real life costs that come with it. And we understand that we would like to provide all of these services and we can't all the time. And that's where being upfront is super important. Okay, let me see what time we're at. Amazing. So we are going to kind of go into a Q&A portion here. I would just ask, I'd ask and apologize to our interpreters if we've been talking quite fast. It's something that we were just trying to be hyper aware of, but we may have faltered. And so I ask the same of our audience members. If you have a question, just please speak a little bit slowly, but also talk about who you are, what show you're bringing to the festival, and then your question. I think that would be amazing. Haverty, am I good to walk around and provide the mic, or do you have a...
I can ready.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, Haverty's good and ready, but yeah, in the back.
It's as close as you can.
I have a few questions on two of your code of conduct. There's something about censorship. I can start over. On page 2 of your code of conduct, is it not working? Test 1, 2, 3. It says we don't censor your words unless there's actively harmful or hateful. It says that
We're with the first mic, Haverty. Oh,
No, the red one.
Yep.
Sorry, friend.
howdy, hello, use this one. The reason why I'm asking this is because I worked on a show 3 years ago, and they asked someone to remove a song from her musical, and I wasn't sure why, and it says here that there's limits to the uncensored nature, which are often set by the Access Advisory Board and enforced by a committee made up of members of Hollywood Fringe staff and board of directors. So I'm wondering, who those, what is that process when you submit your script and you say, this is the show I want to do? And then do you guys come back and say, cut this out, take this out, we can't do this? What does that look like? And then is there an appeal process?
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit to this, and then I'm going to pass it to Lois, who would absolutely Lois, you just want to take it?
Yeah. Hey, everybody.
Lois, sorry,
Hi.
Ellen and Lois are co-executive directors of the festival, who know the ins and outs.
Yeah, no, this is a great question. And so so I can give the best answer, was the show at Hollywood Fringe that you're talking about?
It was at Hollywood Fringe,
Okay,
yeah.
'cause I will name, we've never done that. And we just started adding actually our language around content just last year. Moving up. Okay, hello. Everybody. No, I don't know what to do. Okay. But with that, y'all, it's really just making sure we don't have hate speech in shows. It's work that we can feel confident uplifting. But the line is, it's not super strong. It's as long as there's no hate speech, there's no problem. We're not actively reading scripts. We're not actively coming to shows looking for this. It's something, if we do find out, there will be a conversation. Usually it ends up something like, hey, this one line needs to, and here's why, or it's to make sure our community feels safe and there's no harm being done. Does that answer your question a little more?
Sure of why they asked her to take a whole song out. There was no hate speech in it at all. It was actually just a very devotional, wonderful song. It wasn't, there was no, I don't know. It's very confusing. It's good to know that you clarified that you guys aren't scouring over scripts and all that. Okay.
And even then, y'all, it's literally, we have a conversation. So it's not and pulling. The 1 or 2 times it's ever happened in the last couple of years has been a conversation with the producer where we talk through, what was your intentionality? Perhaps usually it's the question of who is on your project team? Is this coming from lived experience, or are you speaking to a race that you are not familiar with in such a real way? And so it always ends up in a conversation, though. It's never just an email saying, hi, pulled your show, okay, bye. It's always a conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then even in the conversation, maybe the person can say, well, I'm still going to keep it and I'll just, deal with it, or how does that work?
If it were to come to that, the reason where it would end up being okay, you're keeping it is because, again, we find out your co-director is speaking to lived experience, or there's multiple reasons it could be okay, no big deal. Thank you so much for clarifying that for us. That way, if it comes down to our email, we're able to discuss it as well.
Okay.
But there is a chance, if it goes against our code of conduct, if our committee sees that if it's harmful to a protected group, then that decision will be made. But we'll always work with you to help make that easy and it not ruin your show.
Okay, so in her situation, it was something that wasn't her lived experience, but she was playing a bunch of historical characters. And this...
Yeah. And so that probably, I'm not gonna...
I think I know what you're talking about, too. And I want to be honest and say this is a very, very rare instance, but it was something that was flagged because it was there's been 2 pretty problematic things where people have been I'm white and I'm going to play a black person.
That's what it was, yeah.
Let's talk about that privilege and that thought process. And so what we did with that instance is we had a conversation with the producer, and I don't know if you're talking about this show, but that had happened. And for us, we had a conversation with the producer. The producer was like, oh, I see how that could be different. They went back to their director. They had a conversation about how are we going to honor the fact that this show is about inclusivity, about empowering women, and make sure that if a Black person comes in, they don't feel like, okay, now you're kind of talking about my experience as a Black woman, and more saying, I want a show that empowers women, and I want to have a show that empowers Black women. And so I think that there's a lot of nuance when it comes to these conversations, and they're never going to be black and white because these are gray area conversations, and they need to be. And they need to be private between the producer and Fringe staff. And then we need to just kind of navigate it through from there. And it's really about what is going to sell your show after this. Our whole hope is that after Fringe, your show is not over. We also have a lot of cutting edge work, and we want to make sure that that work is able to be as extreme as it wants to be. We really want people to be able to take big, big, big risks. But when you're taking those risks, be like, where's the context? You know what I mean? And having those deep conversations takes time, and it takes a lot of effort. And it's happened twice in the time that Lois and I have been around. And each time has ended with that show going on and having a great run.
Thank you. Yeah, and there was another show that pointed a gun at an audience, and that was really uncomfortable. So I understand. I'm glad you spoke about the gun thing. One other question I have, sorry, it's my last question, about content warnings. Let's say you have 3 of them, but you forgot a 4th one. What happens? Do they shut down your show because you were so busy putting your show together that you forgot something?
Well, I will say human nature is human nature. And truly, you probably will figure it out after the first performance. And you'll be like, oh, I can go back and edit the site. Because we do want to always respect that, yeah, a lot happens during Fringe. And there are things that get lost in the shuffle that that you're conscious of with your rehearsal with actors. And so if you've listed 3 of those content warnings and have forgot that 4th one, you're able to, after the first week of previews, if you're performing them, go back in and be like, oh, shoot, here are my 3, here's that 4th. I will also say, just briefly touching on what Ellen and Lois were talking about, but in a sidestepping kind of way, not necessarily on content, but on tapping artists on the shoulder, being like, hey, just a heads up, don't use copywritten material unless you have the rights. We do have some shows coming to Fringe that are productions that have been produced before and have their rights up for sale. We tend to check in with those so that they're not getting into any legal trouble. But also, I will mention to just be aware of any promotional photos you're using, that you're not taking something that is copywritten. Don't take a photo of a famous actor and put it up, because there are rights and implications that get into it. And we just don't want that unnecessary, not only stress, but potential mess that you can get yourself into. That's completely separate from really what we were talking about. But I just want to bring it to the room because it is something that we really don't want to have happen, because it does ruin a festival experience. And I know there are statute of limitations where it's sure, I did my show 3 years ago, but that's the statute of limitations. So it's a side thing, but I just want to ask that everyone err on the side of caution there. Yeah, Lois, do you want to add a little bit more? I know that's not the question you asked. It just reminded me of something artists should know about.
Yeah, no, you said it perfectly. I have a question from the chat, if I can throw that in.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, by the way, for your questions.
Sure, thank
fantastic.
you.
Yeah. I know that you can always reach out. If you have something in your show that you're like, this might come up later, just let us know, y'all. We're so happy to have that conversation, hop on a call, and make sure you're not worried moving into the festival season. Okay, so Greg from the chat, my show has adult themes: suicide, genocide, sex, queerness, but it's also dramatically dependent on a kind of mystery there. Do you think writing adult themes is sufficient for this content warning?
I would recommend to list some of them, as much as you're able to be comfortable with. I understand there is mystery and intrigue in shows like that, but because the nature of Fringe is so experimental and such a vast array that, everyone going into your show may not necessarily know you or your work. And I think it's super important that you're not going to ruin, I hope you wouldn't be able to ruin your experience by writing discussion of genocide. And you're then able to still fulfill your artistic intention and desires while letting your audience feel very comfortable sitting in the seat, especially because we have some artists or some theater goers who are artists but also audience members that see. I've met a lot of people last year that saw 60 shows. And to give you a frame of reference, people see shows 5 in a day, back to back to back, and they love it. And it is a lot of theater to intake, and there is some emotional capacity there that goes into it. But many of them are highlighting the shows in our printed guide that they want to see. They're reading about the show, making sure that they want to know what they're getting into. I would err on the side of caution of listing those. You may not want to explain everything in that way, like your synopsis, But as long as you're like saying this is what is in the show, that is what will be mostly very, very triggering to some people in my audience. Do you want to know? We're asking in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
Is this working? Okay, great. Thank you for all this information. This is great. I have a question about content warnings, just because they're kind of a new concept for me, and I want to make sure I understand. So my show is, it's just a silly musical about mushroom trip, and I saw the thing about drug abuse, and I'm thinking like the word abuse is kind of catching, because I'm like, well, it's technically illegal, right? But it doesn't. I don't feel like my script is portraying it in a particularly harmful or kind of destructive light. So I'm like wondering, would that include a content warning? And then a similar instance, there's a scene in my script where a character takes a shower and they're going to be in a flesh-colored sweatsuit with like comically like placed censor bar. Content warning? Like when you're kind of being cheeky and playful about some of these more mature themes, is it treated the same that it would more mysterious?
First part on the mushroom trip. You're fine. That's okay. Also, like I'm sure you'll be working on a synopsis of the piece for the short description and the larger description, and that audience will absolutely be reading that, especially on the short description. If that is the overarching narrative of the show, I'm sure it's going to be popped up into that short description and longer description, so it should be good. On the example of nudity, though, I would like to defer to Ellen and Lois.
No, and I think these are great questions, and you're doing exactly the right thing already by like trying to think of those gaps. I mean, if everyone in the room is just starting to think about the gaps, you're going to be totally fine. I would say, there's a word of it, like not nudity, but mention it, because it might change the age group that wants to go, and it also might help you market your show, right? Like it's kind of leading into some of that marketing and theme. So I think mention it, but I'm trying to think of the right word, and I can't. But it's not like, no, it's not even partial because you fully covered, but it's like
suggested.
There it is. Thank you. This is
and we're all learning together.
We're doing it. Yeah.
I'll also, because I don't think talked about it on the website page when you're creating your project, which so many of us have done. You're able to go back in and like if you realize that your suggested age range or age limit should be higher, you can go and do that. Like I know that these town halls are free, open dialogue, so we do ask that they're like 18 and up. Typically, every project shows, and they say like actually it's like 5 and up or 12 and up, and that's something else to control, like people coming into your space, and because there is, I think it's rare, but there is sometimes there's moments where someone's like, I came into the show, I didn't know what was going on, and oh my god, am I mad? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of detail on the website, and there's a lot of detail of what happened, but. It does happen, and we assist in like mediating that.
Yeah, help us support you, right? Because if we're able to see it on the page, because your audience is going to come to us first, right? And then we're going to come to you. So if we have all of the information, if we're looking at the project page, like I would love for our response to be, hey, it was listed here. I'm sorry you saw it, but I cannot give you a refund because it was listed. And I want to add to the age, because that's your first like accessibility flag or your first content warning if you think about it. So make sure that is really correct. Like really think about your show, think about what age it's going to be appropriate for, because that is the first one. And if you are no, we don't have any 21 plus venues, so never mind.
Yeah.
But you can make it 21 plus. Sorry, we used to have a bar.
When it comes to any of this, it's all about making sure that you are doing your best to market your show to your audience, because the Fringe audience is so vast. You're going to have your like nitpicky types, and then you're going to have your I go to Fringe because I want to see the fucking weird shit types. And then you're going to have your types that are like somewhere in between where they're nitpicky and weird. And those are the hardest to navigate. So our whole goal is that when we navigate those, we can be like, you know what? We've been so in deep conversation with this show because it has tricky themes that we don't have to worry about a complaint because we've been in deep conversation with them. And we can say, no, we know what they're doing and we've got their back. Our whole goal is to have your back as the artist, protect you as the artist from having a bad experience. And so we'll never try and overstep in that place unless it really is something that our artist advisory board has set, which is hate speech or playing a character that is not in your race or things like that. And even with that, then there's talking about the gray area, talking about how to navigate those things.
Yes, and just quick pause, because I do want to have Ellen and Lois continue. Sorry, Haverty, can we just have the camera on the interpreters? Because I know I want to see Ellen and Lois, but I also want what they're saying to be interpreted. Thank you, sorry. You can go back, Lois.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, that was it. And
Sorry.
I think there was a question here, right? If we're good.
Cool, my bad. I just,
No, it doesn't make sense sometimes.
Okay. Is it also supposed to be really close to my mouth like this?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So my question is for if you're writing a play that has a lot of content warning themes, I know you should write it in the long description. Should you also write it in the short description? Or like, how does that work? Because like my play is like 90% mental illness, and there's no way to avoid that. And if somebody somehow misses that, like that could be a problem.
Well, yeah, I think that there's this moment where if your show is dependent on it, like that's what your show is about, it's gonna find its way into your short description regardless because that's what the narrative of your show is. And so it's like if it is 90% of your show, I imagine it will be included, not necessarily like as blatant as like a content warning, but like when you're explaining, like it's like roughly like 3 sentences synopsis, it'll probably come into play there.
I'll add in if it's something where, if it is an extreme content warning, and we're talking something where if you fear for your audience, if they don't know ahead of time and are able to mentally prepare for that experience, use your venue box office as well. Some venues are going to have, they're going to run your box office. Sometimes you, the individual show will, but use that as that additional space to go, hey, flashing lights is another one, right? Because that's medical, something that's medical, or it could be deeply trauma filled for an audience member. Your box is going to be that second, just in case they missed it, you're taking care of them there. And they'll keep coming back to your shows because you've taken care of them. So now when you email about your third run, they're going to be like, hell yeah, I trust that artist. Because that's key, y'all. Marketing is trusting your audience or artist.
Hello, my name is Chris. My pronouns are he, him, and my show is a comedy called What Happens in the Dark. It seems like there are 2 schools of thought on a lot of these accessibility talks. And on the one hand, it's like providing an interpreter for a show and sort of setting this is the night that is having an interpreter. And then also this other school of thought of if people need an interpreter, they can ask for that sort of thing and you can make accommodations. In general, and maybe there's not a definitive answer, between those 2 schools of thought, is there a direction that you're better off going? Because it's this idea of like, maybe people wouldn't be available. You set a show as the one with the interpreter and then nobody ends up needing it that show, but somebody else wants to come to a different one.
And what a waste of money if you're providing a interpreter for one show, but you're not inviting deaf audiences.
No, valid.
And so I think that like the whole point of providing an interpreter is making a marketing plan where you're inviting deaf audiences in to come see your show. And some of us aren't at that level, right? Some people are like, you know what? This is me getting my show up in Fringe and I need this. And some people are like, I want to level up in my producing and I want to reach a new audience. I also think that booking interpreters is really expensive. You need to rehearse with them. And you need to be able to have so many things. So a lot of people will say, I'm going to forego that and make everything else about my show as accessible as possible until I get to the run where I have built that audience, I have built that trust, I have built that narrative. And if you already have deaf friends and folks that could benefit from that happening, then it is something that maybe you can work with them in tandem to schedule around that. And then it could be a schedule it on your own thing. But I think that really, if you're booking an interpreter, you need to be ready to work with an interpreter as a part of your production process. And that takes a lot of money and investment, and it is not for everyone at the point of their producing. It is for every artist at some point in their producing career, right? But not necessarily in the Fringe part of it.
I'm going to quickly add because exactly. But accessibility, like anything we're doing, we're growing, we're learning, right? And you're not going to be perfect. And so think about it as steps too. Like you basically compared what is the best case scenario and quite frankly, what Fringe is able to do right now, which is provide interpreters for some of our larger events, 1 or 2 panels, but then make them available upon request because that's where our budget is. And so like think about accessibility like you would anything you're learning and trying to be the best at it's a process. And so if you can take one of those 2 things off your list every time you produce a new show, fantastic. You're on the right road.
Hollywood Fringe had its first accessibility plan in 2018. And it took us like 5 years to really get to a point where we were able to start teaching our producers how to do things. And so know that like our plan to provide this workshop is not even that every single Hollywood Fringe producer is going to do every single one of these things. It's that we're able to provide as many options for as many people who have as many interests as possible. So say you have a lot of friends that are, need that sensory friendly show, which a lot of artists have that friend group that needs the sensory friendly show. Then you have those tools to be able to do it. If you have that deaf audience, you have the tools to do it. And if you're looking to build those, It's taking this and then also creating a marketing plan for those audiences to make sure that you're in kind of that concert. Because those audiences do exist. 11% of Hollywood Fringe audiences last year were disabled. And so you have to kind of think about the fact that disability does exist and it's 25% of our population, while also kind of putting in your own growth plan of how you're going to make accessibility an initiative that you are committing to as an artist, not just as a fringe show.
Just to clarify slightly on something you said of if you have an interpreter, they should be there from the beginning. So in your mind, that's not something that you could make available upon request because it has to be built in from day one type of thing?
And like, of course, of course there are exceptions to the rule. Sometimes, if you're working with an interpretive service, you can talk to them about your show and like your things and talk to them about what they think is the best idea. But if you want it to be, this great experience where deaf audiences are going to be like excited to come see your show, having it be built into your show in some way is way more exciting for them because it is. And I've seen some incredible work at Hollywood Fringe do that and other fringes. But it does take a ton of time and money investment. And I just want to say that providing accessibility as a checkbox is never going to be good for you as an artist, but providing it as something that you're working towards and always kind of trying to be better at is going to get you to that place where you have that incredible show. And then it just blows people away. Right.
Cool. One more not related at all question that hopefully is a much easier one. When you have your production team on the website, do you recommend that that's just production team in terms of producers, or should that be a place where your whole cast is listed as well? Whole cast. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Cool.
put your whole cast in there.
Okay,
Anyone
great.
working on the team. Yeah, that's really helpful. I mean, it's just great for everyone involved. But yeah, whole crew, whoever's working on it, advise them to make an account, add them to the project page. It's super helpful.
Great. Thank you.
And they get Jeanette's emails if they're added.
Yes, and then you get my emails that I write for you guys. I love doing those. Please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for doing this and helping us produce our shows. Really appreciate it. My name's Anthony, and I'm putting up a dark musical, kind of like Lord of the Rings goes biblical musical play. And I was wondering, how does the audience who can review the shows, if they're like purchasing a ticket as a guest, could they review the show or they have to create an account? How does that work?
Yeah, I could take it. No, that's a great question. So reviews, and we'll talk about this in great detail in our next workshops, y'all. We try to give you the steps as you need them so that you don't have too much information all at once. But with reviews, anyone who purchases a ticket on the Fringe website, we track that. And so we're able to, if they put in a review, it's a certified review, meaning they bought a ticket. We can confirm said ticket was bought and it wasn't mom from Washington dropping reviews, which is so lovely. But if mom didn't see the show, not to be trusted here, right? But you can, as an audience member, if you didn't, maybe you just got let in through the door and there's no verification, you can still write a review. It comes up as uncertified, like a general review. But if you can confirm that they bought a ticket, send support an email. Hey, so-and-so bought a ticket at the door. There's no record on the site, and we'll happily certify it. We're not trying to over police it, right? But so just let us know if it's an uncertified review that needs updating, and we can take care of that for you.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
I will also add that the producers can also certify the uncertified reviews on their page. Yeah. So I mean, as much as I would love to have your email that says can you certify it? I'm like, yes, but also you can also certify those reviews yourself, which is super fun. Yeah, and that way you'll get a more intimate knowledge of whatever they're saying, it'll probably be speaking to the show itself. So there's kind of a tell where you're oh, you saw the show, instead of, because there is sometimes spam and that's oh yeah,
Which please email us about that, because
email us if
the
there's
bots
spam,
are going crazy.
Because there are bots that happen on the Fringe website where they're hey, get this discount to this casino. And I'm that's not what... Yeah, it's that's not what my show's about. My show has nothing to do with casinos. I'm sorry. Any questions?
Sports betting now.
It's sports betting, yeah.
Ooh.
Any...
So if you're into that, keep it up. But otherwise, let us know and we'll take it down.
Yeah.
If you're paranoid that something might have a topic that's within the code of ethics, we just shoot you an email and being hey, there's this one situation where this one line is kind of a microaggression, but it's addressed, or
Yes, we're here. We're not absolutely. Please do we're here as a resource. We're again I also want to make it very clear, specifically with accessibility and everything, we're not here to get you. We're not gonna be like, oh, they didn't put this content warning for this day. Like, it's fine. It's okay. Like we're all learning. We're all learning. Like Alan was saying earlier, like the whole us even be able to educate future fringers on accessibility is very recent because things are changing all the time. So we're learning. We want to spread that information as much as you can. And again, even when we were talking about earlier with your show about like the sue and everything, you're like, is that considered nudity? We were all like, is it? Like, is that so good? Like, we all were just deciding in the moment too. Like, it's a conversation. So as long as you start the conversation, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to figure that out with you. And if anything in the future when your shows start and then we get something, if we receive something like, hey, so-and-so show has this and it wasn't put on their content warning, we're not going to email you and be like, ha, you're out. Like, no, like, we got you. Like, we're going to be like, that would be so silly. Like, why would we do that? Like, we would just be like, hey, we got this. No, like, can we check in about you what this means? And a lot of the times it's just like, they just didn't know. And then we learn together. You update your project page and you update your audience. We're good to go. That's all it is. But yeah, please do. Thank you for even, that's really good too, to think about your pieces objectively. Like, especially, I wrote my show and I brought it up here and I had my actors working on it. I've had them act that was a long process for me. And then I literally had to like give it to like a friend of mine in a class. And I was like, can you just read this and tell me like what pops out at you? And there were things where I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was something concerning. Thank God I had someone I trusted to do that. So again, think objectively. But yeah, thank you for that question.
Hi, I'm Regina. My show is Trans Mom versus Family Court. Hi. And because my descriptions talks about the transphobia, do I have to still put a content warning on it? I mean, if it's like 5 times if it's in the title and if it's
I think people are gonna like expect that might be broached.
Yeah.
I think that's also true. Is that I'm so sorry, and I'm so sorry that I keep talking. So you go, Roddy.
You're fine. Yeah, I think what we've talked about among a couple other shows is like where the subject matter is unavoidable. That's okay, and your short description will absolutely talk about it. Your title may talk about it. And that also, I mean, that's more than the content warning, like the biggest signal for an audience member being like, oh, that's what's going to be talked about. That's where my expectations lie. Ellen, do you want to add anything else to that?
No, I think if your show is about, your lived experience, it's going to be really clear that you're going to talk about those things. And if it's not, then that's your time to be able to kind of think, how are you marketing it to those people from that community that are going to be in your audience? Because our audiences are diverse, make sure that you're having it be clear to people what is coming in. They're coming in to watch, Like I've gone into a show and been like, this was really, really dark and really hard. And I thought it was going to be a comedy. And that's not a good feeling, And I've also gone to things that like had so many content warnings and I was like, oh, this is way too many content warnings, you're all good. And it's about learning that balance. And you might have one show that has too many things on the page. And then you're like, oh, I can take it away here. I can take it away here. It's so specific to your piece. And so you're going to try things at Fringe and see what works.
I missed the very beginning when you did a land acknowledgement. And I don't remember if you said that we're required to do one for all of our performances.
Yeah,
take it away, Lois.
And this is a new thing. We'll send out information again closer to when everyone starts their tech, but we work with the venues on this as well. This started just last year that every show does a land acknowledgement, and we have it prepped, and you can certainly add to it. And we've had shows, especially that were about lived experience. They talked about the land acknowledgement in a very different way and had blended it into their story. But we have a recording we'll send out to all venues and all artists, and then it's up to the artist and the venue depending on who's running that pre-show speech, because a lot of venues do it for you. And so we'll make sure all parties have it, but it will be required this year. Yes.
Yeah, I heard somebody use their opening little remark like, hey, welcome to the stage. Da, da, da. Yeah, we're here in Compton or whatever. And we're also on the land of blah, blah, blah. So they kind of incorporated it into their story. So it's not just a blanket, just an announcement. You can weave it in if you want.
Thanks, Haverty. Yeah, does that answer the question, or do you want to? Okay, cool. Yes, I think that we're like making that shift over to doing that because it is just, it's important. It's very meaningful for so many of our community members. Yeah, sorry. No, yeah. No more questions in the chat, and if there are no more questions in the room, we are. Oh my God! Wow. So I talk a lot and I talk really fast often, and so we just never finish on time. And like, this is great. I don't.
We got Greg's question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I say we, I meant me. I don't finish on time. I always go ahead of time. Ellen and Lois are great.
So Jeanette's the magic here. Is that?
Maybe. I think
I just have to sit here.
Yeah. You have a calming presence. Anyway. We're gonna end the chat in a second momentarily. So any last minute questions, Haverty will be exiting us out. We're all still gonna be here. We don't disappear. We'll be like one of us or two of us maybe like moving the room back to neutral. But also if you're like, I didn't really want to ask a question on the chat or in person, can I just pull you aside and ask this question? Also, if it's non-accessibility related and just generally fringe, that's okay too. I just want to reiterate that you can contact us at support@hollywoodfringe.org as the email. And then also, if you sign up to the artist newsletters, you get access to the one-on-one schedulings where you can ask any fringe questions and we'll schedule a Zoom meeting and chat all about what your question may be. Any other ways to access us? I think those are the main ones. Those are the ones where we reply the fastest. Support at Hollywood Fringe. There's always like 2 or 3 people monitoring that. And during the festival, we like update that, by the hour super fast, which is where like audiences and artists are asking questions. But right now it's mostly artist questions and we try to respond within 72 hours, if not sooner, depending on weekends or whatnot. But yeah, if nothing else, thank you all for attending. Thank you so much to our interpreters from Sign Language Company. Truly, it was amazing. I hope we did okay.
Is it literally called line sign?
What?
Linesigning.com?
Oh. Sign Language Company.
Sign
Language Co. That's what Nigel is a team member at. Yeah. Sorry, you're asking about what the name of the place is. Yeah. Oh, which can also be found in our participant document, hollywoodfringe.org/participants. They're listed there as a service, and just, start that conversation whenever you need to if you're at that point in your Fringe show producing journey. Yeah, that's it. I think we're good.
Thank you.